It's the year 2009. You just saw Transformers Revenge of the Fallen in theaters, and after experiencing this unhinged little movie, well, obviously you want to play the video game, of course. You probably only had a Wii and got it on there. You play it for a bit, and then you move on to other things. But years later, you probably want to see what the Xbox 360 and PS3 were like, and so you get one of those systems, and because you probably traded in Revenge of the Fallen on Wii years ago at a GameStop, and maybe you want to re-experience that same game but on a more powerful system, you get it on one of those consoles, and then it turns out it's a completely different game. Yeah. This is obviously something we don't really see anymore, but during this generation, it was very common to see two games share the exact same title on different platforms, but be completely different experiences. I personally love looking at this type of stuff. I've made it clear with a bunch of other videos that I find this stuff really fascinating. Seeing different takes from different developers on one game is just so cool to see. And with Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, the game, it's no exception. But first, a little background. So, the 2007 Transformers games. From what I can tell at least, they were a big success. Heck, some of the versions even managed to achieve greatest hits on their respective platforms. So, I mean, hey, you got this big sequel coming out. Makes a lot of sense to do different video game adaptations for that as well. However, instead of 3 different games, we have 4 different games. First, we have the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC versions developed by Luxoflux, who you might remember from the Shrek 2 and Kung Fu Panda games I talked about a while back. Unfortunately, this would be their last game they would develop before closing down, which is a shame. They've made some really good games in the past. The Wii and PS2 versions, instead of just being ports like last time, they were instead their own game being developed by Chrome Studios, who you might know for the Ty the Tasmanian Tiger games, the first 2 Legend of Spyro games, and a few other licensed games you might have heard of. So here's a quick fun fact. In 2006, they bought another developer called Melbourne House, who was the studio behind the PS2 Armada game, and if you look at the credits for both that game and Revenge of the Fallen, they share a few people who worked on both. That's pretty interesting to find out. They share like nothing in common, but it's still a really interesting little tidbit. Then we have the DS versions, once again split between an Autobot and Decepticon version, with Vicarious Visions returning from the 2007 DS games to work on this. Finally, we have the PSP version with Savage Entertainment returning from the 2007 PSP game to work on this. But yeah, let's just get into it, and we'll start with the PS3 and 360 games since that's the one I think most of you are familiar with. Oh, by the way, yes, I'm aware there were mobile games, but I'm good. So, I first played this game a little bit after I first got my PS3 around the early 2010s. I was getting a bunch of the Transformers games for that system, and well, one of them was Revenge of the Fallen. And I remember it was pretty fun, especially the online multiplayer, but I haven't played this one in years, so I'm curious to see how well it holds up now. So, like the 2007 console game, we get to choose between either the Autobots or Decepticons, though unlike that game, both campaigns aren't as distinct from each other. Like, for instance, the game doesn't really have a narrative at all. It very loosely follows some events from the movie, but they just kinda happen. What the main plot for both sides basically amounts to is just doing random missions around the world, and then in between some of those missions, something resembling what happens in the movie occurs. That's kinda it. Like, compared to the first game where while that was also just following its respective film, it still had a narrative. The stuff you were doing was progressing the plot. Here, the missions you do don't really feel like the plot is progressing in a natural way. Like, you do 3 unrelated missions and then out of nowhere you go do something that happens in the movie. And all the cutscenes, with a few exceptions, just amount to either the Autobots or Decepticons just talking in a dark room. That's it. The only plot point that the game tries to expand upon is in the Decepticon campaign, where Megatron desires to become a Prime. The Fallen promises him this, but then at the end of the game, Optimus tells Megatron it's all a lie, and then Megatron betrays the Fallen. It is an interesting idea for Megatron to have, his desire to become a Prime. I don't believe I've seen that type of plot point in any Transformers media, but that's kinda it. Otherwise, the narrative is a whole lot of nothing. I will say, I do like the character interactions. It's nice to see some of these characters get a shine in the spotlight, especially on the Decepticon side. There are some moments here I absolutely love.
Today's mission was accomplished with great speed. We Decepticons are always swift in action. Although you, Starscream, are equally swift in retreating. I have never retreated. Ever! Of course not, Starscream. You simply advance backwards.
A good amount of the actors from the movie are here, with a few exceptions, like Frank Welker coming back to play Megatron like in the first game, who is still great as always. I really like Jetfire's voice here a lot more than I do in the movie. It kind of plays a lot more into the wisdom aspect of his character.
Here you are. You must find a witwicky lad and get into the tomb of the ancients. Your radar is showing his last known location. Hurry.
The most interesting one, though, is that of the Fallen. Here, he is played by James Arnold Taylor, which is so funny since all I hear when he speaks is a demonic Johnny Test.
For too long I have searched for this harvester. Now, I claim your son.
Also, it's strange that Bumblebee just has a normal voice in this game. Like, I guess they didn't know he was just gonna stick to his radio voice for the sequels, so we get to hear a lot more of his normal voice in this game, and honestly, it's not that bad.
All NESCOM arrays repaired, and we got rid of a few more Decepticons too.
Apparently Demolisher wasn't the last of them.
Not even close.
As for the rest of the presentation, this game looks great for the PS3 and 360. The models and environments look very nice for this generation, easily a step up from the first game. The music is good. Some of it is just reused from the first game, but we got some new pieces here and there. I really like the main menu theme in particular, and the faction select theme goes so hard. So what we have here is a third-person shooter, sort of continuing what the first game was doing. However, while you can do pretty much everything from the first game, well, aside from the shield blocking, that's not in this game, Revenge of the Fallen handles all of that in a much different way. If you played the first game, Revenge of the Fallen is going to be a hard shift to go into. Whereas that game's movement was making you feel like a giant robot, this game is more about the versatility of your character. Like, look how much faster it is compared to the first game. You couldn't really do this stuff before. You can now dash in different directions, your movement speed is much faster, and transforming works in a very different way. In the first game, you just tap a button and you could transform. Easy. In Revenge of the Fallen, you have to keep the button down to stay transformed. Now, while this sounds a little annoying and not as streamlined as the first game, the difference is that you can perform different options when you go between modes. Like, if you hold the jump button down and let go of the transformation button, you could do this huge jump to gain a lot of height in the air. It's awesome to use. If you hold down the melee button instead, you can instantly knock an enemy down, making them easy for you to finish them off. I absolutely love how this game feels, and it doesn't end there. You still have your melee attacks as well as your ranged attacks, but they feel way more fun to use, especially your ranged attacks, since they actually become your primary way of fighting enemies, unlike the first game where your ranged weapons were pretty much useless outside of like 2 types of enemies. Every character also has their own special ability to use, ranging from Bumblebee's stun, Ironhide's turret, Optimus gaining defense, and heck, Megatron just gets an insta-kill blast against all regular enemies. I love this system. I think it gives a lot of variety to these characters you'll be using, and it lets you experiment a little bit to see which character would be best to use. Not to mention, it's just a good roster of characters to pick from. You get regular ones from the movie like Optimus and Megatron like usual, But how about more obscure characters like Breakaway, Long Haul, and if you managed to get the DLC before it got delisted, you could play as a few G1 characters, Satellite Soundwave, and even Jazz, which is very strange to see him alive, but he's really fun to play as. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, there's also the overdrive system where if you fill it up with killing enemies, you can activate it and become invincible and you dish out a ton of damage. You can literally break bosses in two with this move. It's so satisfying to pull off. Now, in terms of the structure, there's no chapters or any hub worlds. I mean, I guess there is the free roam mode you can unlock, but every area is way smaller and there isn't anything to do in them, so I don't really count that. But basically, you do missions for your respective sides, and I feel combined with the really great core gameplay, these were a lot of fun. It's not a crazy variety to speak of, you're still just killing enemies, but I feel these were a much better challenge than in the first game for a lot of reasons. Number one, while you do have a lot more movement, enemies are also a lot more versatile, and you can easily be overwhelmed by them if you don't know what you're doing. Secondly, while you have infinite ammo for all your weapons, they could still overheat, and if that happens, you gotta wait a bit before it could get back to normal. So you need to be careful, especially if it's a fight with a bunch of enemies on screen. And the last thing is that you are now ranked during missions, with the highest rank being Platinum. Not only do you need to get a good amount of high ranks to proceed, but the ranking system gives these missions way more replayability. If you're unable to complete a mission with one character, you could always try it with another character to see if you can get the Platinum rank. They give you a reason to replay the missions, and mastering them is so satisfying to do. I sort of compare it to the ranking system in the Sonic games. It gives me a lot of similar vibes to that. And that's not all. You also have a good amount of optional missions and regular challenges to complete for each level. Some will give you the rest of the characters you can use for that stage, and like I mentioned, help you get a higher rank. And some of these can even give you Energon to use for upgrades that help your entire team. And you could even unlock full G1 episodes. Yeah, no joke, you could just straight up unlock entire episodes of the 80s Transformers series. Sure, nowadays, this isn't as exciting since you can just go on YouTube and watch them, but at the time this game came out, it was really awesome reward. There is just so much more to both of these campaigns than what was offered in the first game. Like, they still don't take that long to finish, but there is just way more stuff to do this time around. Though, with that, there are still some issues with this game. For one, I really dislike the tutorial at the beginning. There is nothing wrong with having a tutorial at the beginning of any game, but this one just goes on for way too long, and it's mandatory to do before you get into the real missions. They should have either made this optional or went with like having tutorial tips like in the first game, because this is just a pace killer. Secondly, I feel the bosses are a bit of a mixed bag. Like, for the regular characters, it's pretty fun, but for the non-playable characters, they're either extremely uninteresting or they drag out for way too long. The Devastator fight is genuinely awful. It takes way too long for the weak spots to come out, and it's just so boring. This is probably the worst part of the game for me. Absolutely hated this fight. And what sucks is this game has no checkpoints during the mission, so if you die at all, you have to restart the mission all over again. And for the Devastator fight, which takes forever, dying here sucks so much. But to get back on positive stuff, there's also the online multiplayer. We can't forget about that. Oh. Yeah, so if you don't know, Activision shut down all the online multiplayer servers for these games, so there is no way to play the online modes officially anymore for any of these games. However, I did say officially, as there is actually a way to play the online multiplayer modes for these games, at least on PS3. However, for Revenge of the Fallen, by the time I finally got it working, I didn't have time to set up any multiplayer sessions, so I apologize for that, but take my word for it. Back in the day, I spent a lot of time with the online multiplayer for Revenge of the Fallen. It was a lot of fun, especially with how many characters you get to pick from. even if some of them were clearly better than others. I'm looking at you, Megatron Flight. But still, it was a really fun mode, and if you do manage to get it back online for yourself through other means, you'll have a great time. This game rocks. I think it holds up so well nowadays. Like, even without the online multiplayer, what you have for both campaigns are very satisfying experiences. It's so wild that this game isn't as talked about as the more popular Transformers games later down the road. Like, those games are definitely awesome, don't get me wrong. But Revenge of the Fallen on PS3 and 360, I think deserves a lot of love too. There is just so much to do, and you're going to be here for a while if you're going for 100%. It was awesome to revisit this game. Even if you're not a fan of the Transformers movies, you still got a really fun game to look forward to. I highly recommend it to anyone looking for a fun, fast-paced third-person shooter. So, the Wii and PS2 iterations. This was my first version of the game I played. Again, I only had a Wii, I didn't know what a PS3 was. I remember getting it on my birthday, and I recall me and my friends getting through this game, and then failing at the Megatron boss fight because we didn't know about the block button. So, I have a lot of nostalgia for this one, but I also haven't played it in a long time, so let's see if maybe it holds up nowadays. Unlike all the other versions, this game is not split into two campaigns. It's all one big story where you'll swap between both sides, which I don't mind personally. Like, honestly, I kinda prefer it in some cases. I'm gonna be honest, I actually think the Wii and PS2 version has the best narrative of any iteration of this game. And that's due to the fact that it actually attempts to have a story. In fact, I'll even go as far as to saying that I think the story here is told better than it was in the movie. For one, barely any human characters. Like, this story is strictly all about the Transformers. Like, outside of Sam only having a voiced cameo at the very end of the game, the story is all about the Autobots and Decepticons. Like, while the story is still just the basic plot from the movie, it's just told in a more natural way. Like, even though it's a much smaller cast, there actually is only a handful of named Autobots and Decepticons here compared to the other versions, I think it works to its benefit by giving everyone a good amount of screen time. Like, the Fallen actually has more screen time in this game than he does in the movie. We actually get to see why this guy is a big deal.
Yes, the defeat of the Autobots is at hand. Their leader will stop at nothing to protect this primitive planet, and the lowly human insects who infest it. He must not be allowed to interfere again.
Look, I'm not gonna act like the story here is anything amazing. It's a pretty simple plot when you get down to it, but I very much appreciate the writers here trying to make a story like this work, and I think it succeeds well enough. But here's the thing. I'm talking about the writing and performances. That stuff is good. But if we're talking about the actual cutscenes, oh gosh, it looks terrible. Like, even for the Wii and PS2, these cutscenes are rough. Everyone moves like they're stuck in cement, and they don't even move with their mouths when they talk. Look at Megatron here. He's not even moving his mouth when he talks.
You answer only to me! Even in death, there is no command but mine.
Honestly, I find it more funny than anything. The jank animations kinda make the cutscenes really funny to watch. I think the game itself looks fine. I think the models aren't too bad to look at outside of the cutscenes, but I think the environments look pretty dull, especially during the Decepticon base and the Russian base later on. It just all looks really dull. The soundtrack is similar to the PS3 and 360 version, but this game does have a lot of exclusive tracks to it, and honestly, I think I prefer this selection of songs more. Oh, and the track that plays during the fight with Optimus is genuinely fantastic. Like, I really wish this was in the other version. It's so good, and it fits the fight really well. So, this isn't a third-person shooter, instead it's a beat-em-up platformer. Since we're on the Wii, of course the combat is motion based, and I will say it's not that bad. I honestly would say it's better motion controls compared to the Wii version of the first game. I feel like it was accurate enough for me. It's not great, but it works okay enough. I especially really like the aiming. I always thought Wii Remote pointing worked very well, and here it's no different. The only time I thought the motion controls were a big problem were during the QuickTime events. Like, I feel like it's total luck if it actually counted for me, and it just didn't feel good. But here's the thing, no matter what I say later on, if you are gonna play this game in any form, go with the PlayStation 2 version, since that's just regular buttons you're pressing, and it makes the QuickTime events much easier to do. For the rest of the game, the combat was fine. It's very basic though. You don't have any upgrades you can do, but you do have an energon meter, which I think is really interesting. As you kill enemies or find energon canisters, you can use your energon bar for a couple things. You can fire a charged shot, become more powerful, heal yourself, or do a special transformation special attack, which, by the way, is the only time you transform in regular stages. There is a lot of options given to you, and it gives you something to decide what would be best in this situation. Do you think potentially doing a lot of damage is better? Or maybe giving yourself a power boost? Maybe you want to heal yourself first. It's a lot to think about. I think this is a very cool idea for a system. I personally used healing and the special attack the most, as I feel those were the best to use during fights. Also, I do love the special attack animations. These look really sick. This is really the most interesting the core gameplay gets though, because the actual fighting is just meh. Like I said, it's very basic, you don't get any new moves or upgrades, you're doing the same thing with every character, and it gets very repetitive later on. There are these hacking minigames you can do, but weirdly, these are entirely optional. You don't have to do them whatsoever, which is very odd to see. They're okay, but I just find it weird that you don't have to do these. Now, that's not to say the stages are bad. I don't think even any stage is really that bad. There actually are a good amount of stages I quite enjoyed. The Sideways car stage and Starscream's 2 jet stages were really fun, especially the latter. I loved how frantic they can get, and it controls very well. The Devastator stage in Shanghai is really cool. You're running through the city trying to avoid Devastator constantly stalking you throughout the stage. It was a really cool idea, and outside the QTEs, I enjoyed this fight quite a bit. Much better than the PS3 and 360 version of this fight. In fact, I quite like the bosses in this game. They're just more interesting to me compared to the 360 and PS3 versions of these fights. The Optimus and Megatron fights are pretty cool, and I much prefer the Fallen fight here compared to the HD version. It's just a more interesting fight to me, with you having to guide the projectile he shoots to the portal he summons. It's pretty cool. Outside of that, you can find some collectibles that house stuff you can look at in the gallery, like concept art and models. You still get some G1 episodes here, though it's just the 3-part episode, The Ultimate Doom. There is still multiplayer, but it's just you and another person fighting waves of enemies. It's nothing special. Hey, this is post-editing Omega, and I forgot to mention, but there is a co-op mode as well. It basically works the same as how Mario Galaxy's co-op mode is. I don't know why I forgot to mention it originally, but hey, it's a thing. Just wanted to quickly correct that. But anyways, back to the video. I'll be honest, this game isn't that bad. It's not great. I think overall it's an incredibly mediocre game. Like, I played it just fine and it only took around 2 to 3 hours to finish, but there just wasn't anything that stood out to me. It's one of those games that just goes from one ear to another. You play through it once and then you never think about it again. The combat just isn't that fun outside the energon meter system, and while there were aspects I really liked, overall, the experience was just there. It's a perfectly fine game, but I just don't find it very exciting. I obviously have a soft spot for it personally, since I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and it's not an awful game. I feel Chrome did the best they could with what they had to work with, but nowadays, there's not really a reason to go back to it. If you really like the Transformers movies and you have a soft spot for games like this, It's a harmless game to try out, but you are missing absolutely nothing if you skip this. I don't think it's something I can recommend fully, it's just a very average game at best. Now for the DS versions, which I have a lot of things to say about. So I absolutely love the 2007 DS games. I still would highly recommend playing them. But I actually first played the Revenge of the Fallen games on DS first before ever trying the '07 games. But then I tried those games and never went back to either version of Revenge of the Fallen. It's only until now where I finally get to revisit both versions and see why exactly I stopped playing them when I was a kid. Story-wise, you once again take control of a new recruit who just landed on Earth. You see what it's like to be a Transformer on either side, you do a bunch of missions, and maybe some loose events from the movie happen, and that's it. Yeah, this game barely even has a narrative like the PS3 and 360 version. In fact, you might have noticed I didn't even bother showcasing the differences between both versions' stories. That's because they both share the exact same structure to them. The only difference each have is you're playing as an Autobot or Decepticon, and the ending's a little different. But otherwise, they are both the exact same story and play out pretty much the same way. This is so underwhelming. Like, at least with the HD version, it wasn't following a story I was that attached to. The DS games, however, are following two stories that I absolutely loved. Plots that I thought were not only very well written, but also had an OC that was actually putting you into the shoes of either story. The OC in Revenge of the Fallen is such a downgrade in every respect from the original OC. Like, in the '07 DS games, your OC was either an Autobot rookie trying to find his place on the team, or a Decepticon rookie learning what it's like to be a Decepticon and who to trust. It made them very engaging to follow, and it put you into the shoes of both characters. Revenge of the Fallen's OC character is either a generic Autobot or a generic Decepticon. That's all they are. They don't have anything interesting to say about what it's like to be on either team. You're just playing as a generic plank of wood. They just aren't very engaging whatsoever. I really dislike that a lot. Like, look at this comparison. You tell me which one did it better.
You Decepticons don't know when to quit. Time to teach you that the bad guys always lose. You Autobots are no better than we Decepticons. We might be on opposite sides, but we're both playing the same game.
An Autobot! I thought I smelled something rusty.
You must have a defective sensor. You're the one that's rusty.
Defective? I'll show you defective. I'm going to tear your axle in half.
You shouldn't underestimate me. There's more to me than meets the eye.
You want to know another downgrade? Remember in the first game you choose between a whole variety of vehicles? Here, you get 3. That's it. And what you pick with, you're stuck with throughout the rest of the game. There is no new vehicles you acquire. Heck, you can't even change the color of your character. I think you can probably tell at this point why I stopped playing through this game after I played the '07 DS games. Like, I can live without the hub worlds, but I just hated what they removed from your OC. It was very disappointing. And what's even worse is that this is the last DS Transformer game to have an OC. While War for Cybertron and Dark of the Moon did still get Autobot and Decepticon versions, they completely dropped the OC from the first 2 DS games. And while yes, technically the High Moon games could let you create your own Transformer, that was in a completely different context from this. But you know what? After all that, and I'm gonna be surprised to say this, but this game is actually really good. Like, yeah, as much as I heavily disliked what they removed from the first game, that doesn't change the fact that this game has a lot going for it. So, it's structured similar to the 360 and PS3 versions. You're still going around the world doing missions in each stage. Each stage has 2 missions. The first where you control your OC, while the other mission you're controlling one of the main Autobots or Decepticons. The gameplay is pretty much exactly like how it was in the original 2007 games, but now you can more deeply customize your OC's stats and abilities. You see, during missions you can find and scan these nodes, and in the medical bay, you can give your OC 2 different weapons to wield. nodes to increase your stats, and like the HD version, you can use your energon to upgrade any of your stats. I really like this. Sure, in the first game there was a leveling up system, but here it's a lot more deeper as you can get a little more manual of what you want to upgrade, which is very nice. I really dig the new weapons. Having the choice between different weapons for your OC is really cool, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to experiment to see what will work best for these missions. And I really like the mission variety too. Some of them you're protecting something, maybe collecting energon cubes, a race, scanning objects in a certain time limit. It's a good amount of variety. It also helps that there is a variety of locations you travel through. It gives each stage its own vibe, unlike the original 2007 game, which didn't really have a huge variety of locations. I didn't really like the jet stages though. See, because the level design is way more condensed, it's not really possible to play as a flying character, so we have these stages instead, and they are so dull. There is nothing interesting going on with these at all. Like, I could definitely do without these. Unfortunately, these two versions aren't very distinct. You're visiting the exact same stages and doing pretty much the exact same thing. Each version does get one exclusive level to each. The Autobots get this harbor while the Decepticons get another jet stage, but that's about it. Once you do all the missions for a continent, you do one more big stage, and it usually ends with you facing off against a boss, which are absolutely terrible. They are all exactly the same. They stand in place, you shoot them. They retreat into a force field, you scan something to do damage, or in sideways case, I guess throwing a bomb. Rinse and repeat is the exact same for every single boss. The best boss in this game is the first fight against the opposing OC. At least he actually moves around as you fight him. Look, I'm not gonna act like the first game had amazing bosses, but at least they were all doing something different from each other. These were probably the worst part of the game for me. Just terrible. For the rest of the presentation, the game looks about the same as the 07 DS games, and while I don't care about the story, I do still like the interactions. The Decepticons are really funny in this game, by the way. Like, there is a race they do, and they say whoever loses, they get humiliated, like they're acting like some high school bullies. And then there is this one mission with Barricade. Oh yeah, Barricade's in this version for some reason. And if you take too long to collect the energon cubes, Starscream just starts firing on him to get it done faster. That is so funny. I could 100% imagine the Decepticons doing something like that. It's really funny. This game does still offer some replayability. You can replay missions but with a new condition, find more nodes, and of course Battle for Earth, which is basically this game's equivalent to Allspark Wars from the first game. Again, I never played this mode since I didn't take my DS online, so I have no clue how it played like, but if I'm assuming it was probably more or less the same as Allspark Wars from the first game. But again, let me know how it was in the comments below. I'm sure it was really interesting for the time. This is a really good game. Yes, they removed stuff from the 07 DS game that I really liked, and I wish they were still here. Yes, the story is not at all engaging, and overall, I still much prefer the 07 DS games. However, this is still a really fun game. The core gameplay is great all around. I enjoy the missions offered here. I love the upgrade system. It's just a really well-made game. If you were turned off by this game removing a lot of the iconic stuff from the previous games like I was, please, I urge you to give it another chance. It's a really fun game in its own right, and I would still recommend playing it. And now for the last version to talk about, the PSP version, which I have never played before. I know next to nothing about it outside of the fact it shares the same developer from the previous PSP Transformer game. I don't even know anyone who has even played it before, so this is gonna be a brand new experience for me, so let's just jump in. I gotta say, I really like the menu here. It's very dynamic. I like the vibes here. Once again, this game is split into two campaigns, just like the PS3 and 360 game. I'm not even gonna bother going into the story. It's probably the least engaging story out of all the versions. They literally just reuse dialogue from other versions of the game. It's not interesting at all. So when I heard it was the same developer from the first PSP game, I thought they were gonna maybe expand upon what they had in the first game and really improve what they had, since as much as I didn't like that game, I do think there was potential in it. But no, they decided to do something completely different. We have a top-down arcade shooter. Yeah, I did not expect that, but okay. There is no transforming at will, but it does feel really good. And I think the shooting works very well. The core gameplay is really solid. I got no complaints at all with it. There is a good variety of characters to pick from, including Dead End of all characters. Okay. I like the super moves everyone gets too, even share some of the animations from the Wii and PS2 game. I thought that was pretty neat. I like that all the enemies are based on the 2007 toys. That's pretty cool. Like, this is probably the simplest game to talk about since it's just a top-down arcade shooter. Nothing really much else to it. But the thing is, I don't think the game is that great. Firstly, while I do like top-down shooters, this game is incredibly repetitive. Like, what you're doing at the beginning of the game is all you're doing for the rest of it. Nothing changes for what you're doing for the next 3 to 4 hours both campaigns take. You fight the exact same enemies over and over again. The strategy never changes. It just gets very stale the further you go into it. Sure, there are the driving stages, but there are only 2 in the whole game, and they aren't very good. The controls feel so slippery, and they don't last very long. Another thing is the stages themselves, they go on for way too long. Some of these last for nearly 20 minutes, and by the way, this game has limited lives. Lose them all, and it's back to the beginning of the stage. And this game is pretty hard. It's definitely one of the harder Transformer games I've played. Enemies can do a lot of damage to you, and there are so many of them on screen at once, so if you lose all your lives, it's all the way back to the beginning of the stage, and you have to spend another 15 to 20 minutes trying to finish it. It just drags on and on. Oh, and those escort missions are absolutely awful. They go on forever, and they move so slowly. These were the worst stages in the game by far. At least with the few of the other stages, you could just run to the end, but here, no, you can't do that. It's so funny because the bosses are incredibly easy. I had no problem with any of them. Some only last a little bit, like Devastator I took out in like 10 seconds on my first try. To get a little more positive again, the presentation is pretty good for the PSP. The models and environments aren't too bad for the system. I still really like the music. There are still collectibles to find, like concept art and some G1 episodes, and a couple other side modes like survival and co-op mode. But not gonna lie, this game did not do it for me. It's not an awful game, far from it. It's leagues better than the first Transformers PSP game. At least I wasn't bored while playing through it, and the core gameplay is good, but it drags on for way too long and is hard for the wrong reasons. It's probably my least favorite out of all the versions of Revenge of the Fallen. Like, again, it's not a bad game, but I absolutely hated its pacing, and I don't really have a big desire to replay it. If you want to play a top-down shooter and you like Transformers, again, it's harmless to try out, but you're not missing out on much. I'm so glad I was able to check it out since, again, I had no experience playing through it, but at the same time, I don't think I need to go back to it. And that's all the versions. My gosh, that was a lot. So yeah, the HD and DS games are the ones I'd recommend the most. They are very fun games with a lot to do in them, and as for the Wii and PSP versions, they are harmless games, but I just find them both to be incredibly mediocre. Again, not awful, but you really aren't missing much by not playing them. This was so fascinating to see, like the same idea, but just told in different ways on multiple platforms. It's very fun to go through since, again, this isn't really something we see anymore. But I think we'll call it there. If you like this video, give it a like, and if you're new here to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Plus, if you played any of these games, what did you think of them? I'm curious, maybe you had a different experience than what I did. Let me know in the comments below. I hope you all have an amazing day, and take care. Bye!